Welcome to this next tutorial in the character animation DVD. In this tutorial we are going to be doing character performance. Now that you've learned how to do all kinds of things, a bouncing ball, working with choreographies, doing a run, jump, a walk cycle, all that kind of thing, it's time to go on to setting up your character and getting it ready for character performance. Now, one of the biggest things in character performance is you want it to be um, believable. You want it to have all the principles of animation in there, making it all come together and work together so that your performance not only looks right, but it feels right. It visually conveys what you want it to convey. Now, one thing that a lot of animators will do that are starting out is they will not exaggerate enough. One of the principles of animation is exaggeration. And we see people every day. We see how they move. We see how they act. And when we try to make it exactly the same, a lot of times we tend to think that we're doing it exactly the way it should, and so it should look right. But we're so used to seeing it perfect on a real live human being that when we see it on an animated character, a lot of times it looks a little bit wrong. Now, the way you remedy that is by going to extremes in many situations. Now, as I've been animating for video games, for cinematics, anything like that, one thing that we've noticed is that the more extreme we go, the more believable the animation is. So that's one thing you want to keep in mind as we're setting this up. So in this character performance tutorial, what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to open up Animation Master. I'm going to start a new choreography, or go Project New. That'll give you everything here. I'm going to import a couple objects. I've just got my folder open here, and I'm going to open the Will model. So load that in. And I'm also going to bring in the wave file that I'm going to be using for my choreography, and it's just a wave file. Now you can't drag it in to the choreography, but what you can do is drag it into the sounds, I believe. Well, it's not going to let me do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click on sounds, say import sounds. I'm going to go to my production folder there, open it up, say open, and it brings in that file. Now if I hit play, if I select it and I hit play, well, actually I need it in choreography first. So I'm just going to close the Will model here, and that's about all I need. So now I'm just going to double click choreographies, and it's going to bring in a choreography. Now this is the default choreography that Hash comes with. It's got a camera, key light, fill light, rim light, and ground plane. Now I'm just going to leave it all the way it is, and then towards the end for rendering I'll do some different lighting. So with that in mind, I'm going to grab my Will model and just place it in the choreography here. And then I'm going to grab the sound and drop it in the choreography. Now this sound, the myside.wave, is in there, and I can push play.
Don't touch my stuff. This is my side of the living room, and that is your side of the living room.
So I can do that, and I can just listen to it there. Now it starts out pretty quick.
Don't touch my stuff.
And what I may want to do is slide it down a little bit. So I'm actually going to click on it, and I'm going to just grab it and slide it down a few frames so that there's a little bit of give at the beginning.
Don't touch my stuff.
That way we can get Will into his pose before it gets there. So first thing I'm going to do is a lot of animators when they start out, when they start an animation, they do many different things. Some you'll read all kinds of advice about how to do it. Some draw out thumbnails. Some film themselves. Some do all kinds of things, storyboards, whatever it might be, to get an idea of how they want to do the acting. Now the way that I did it is I tend to do better at acting something out and figuring it out, acting it out, than I do actually drawing thumbnails for it. I find that my thumbnails are more confusing to me, which is probably just my own fault for lack of good thumbnails, but I tend to do better when I just act it out. So what I did is I recorded myself doing this. Now, yes, that's what I look like. in this movie, what I did is I just synced the audio. I was playing it on the computer and taping myself at the same time, and then I went back in and I actually put the real audio clip over the top of it so it matched right. So this is what it looks like.
Don't touch my stuff. This is my side of the living room, and that is your side of the living room. And much to break straight out of a milk carton. It's disgusting.
Okay, so that's the clip. I did this about 40 million times trying to get it the way I wanted to, and I finally got all the gestures right, but I got the words wrong. But that's no big deal because I can fix that in the animation. But what I'm going to do here is, now that I've got my choreography kind of set up, I want to look at my camera. This is how I wanted my camera set up. I wanted my character about right here in the frame. I wanted about, let's see here, I wanted the rule of thirds. If I split this in thirds, I want my character to start out kind of over here somewhere, and I want him to be going out here. This is your line of action. This is your line of sight. He's talking to somebody over here, so you want to leave the space over here for him to talk to. If you have your character too far over here in the middle, and you have him talking over here, you have this big area of blank space over here. And same thing here. If you have him standing over here talking, then it's just there's not enough stuff going on. You have this big negative space here. So not right in the middle, but right about the third right here, there's a lot of action going on this way, and it directs your eye over this way and makes you really think that somebody's sitting out over here that he's talking to. So in here, it also gives me the opportunity to get my arm out in this way and over here too. And this will let me look at all the different kinds of keys. Let's watch this one more time.
Don't touch my stuff. This is my side of the living room, and that is your side of the living room. And much to break straight out of a milk carton. It's disgusting.
Okay, so from this I can see all the different keyframes that I want to use. Now in these keyframes I want to obviously go to extremes. I don't want to just copy exactly what I see. I want to go to extremes. I want to touch stuff up a little more, because with a character you just want to make it a little more exaggerated. Now there's certain things that you want to watch for also. Things like this, like arcs. Okay. Now if you watch my hand, it comes straight up, stops, and goes straight out. But there's still a bit of an arc there and a follow through. Okay. This is a perfect example right here. My hands come up in an arc, they stop, and they go out in an arc. So you got to watch those arcs. It's really good to look at reference because it can show you exactly what you need to do. When I originally did this animation to this sound clip, I actually had him bob his head on each one of these. Don't touch my stuff. He actually went don't, and every time his body would come up and down as if he was bouncing, and I thought, hey, that's pretty good. But then I actually taped myself doing it, and it's really only one hit, don't, and then he goes touch my, and then there's a big one, stuff. Okay, so that's how we want to, the kind of thing that you want to look for. Now I'm going to go back to my camera here in Animation Master, and I need to move my camera around so that it looks right for when he's animating. So I'm going to go into my top view by hitting 5 on the numpad, and I'm actually going to shrink these so you can see it. Okay. As you can see here, I've got my camera, my 3 lights, and then my ground plane. I'm actually going to lock my ground plane and then lock my lights so I don't touch them. And you do that just by clicking the hand in the choreography. Now I'm going to grab the camera, and I'm actually going to bring it about over here, and I'm going to just aim it right at him. Now I'm going to hit 1 to see where I'm at. I'm not close enough, so I'm actually going to zoom in on him a little bit. Now I can do that by going the top view and dragging it in, and then what I do to point is I grab the roll or the handle, and then I just point it right there at him. Click and drag. So let me check right here. So this is about where I want him. He's kind of right in the center here. If you notice, just right up and down, right in the center here. And I actually want him a little more to the side. So there's certain ways you can move your camera. If you hold down Control and you hold down your middle mouse button, you will pan your view. Okay. If you hold down Control and you, if you just middle mouse click and hold, you just pan your view with the camera stuck. If you hold Shift and middle mouse button, you're actually aiming your camera or looking at something. Okay. And then the other thing you do to zoom in is if you push M, that's the move tool, but then you hold down Shift and you hold down your hold down your left mouse button, excuse me, and you drag up and down, you zoom in and out with your camera. Okay. So once again, that is Control, middle mouse button, pans, Shift, middle mouse button, aims, and then hit M, and then hold Shift, and then left mouse button, excuse me, and it zooms in and out. Okay. Once you get this a couple times, you'll be really quick at it. So I'm going to go into shaded mode so I can kind of see him here. Now, this is about where I want him. If I look at my reference footage. Now, one thing too is my eye line is a little low here. If you think rule of thirds here too. Now my lines are pretty bad, but either way, if you think rule of thirds, I'm more on this side and I'm close to here. I want my eye line to be about right here, so I just want to make sure that I'm up just a little bit. So when I'm in Animation Master, if I go to here and I check my rule of thirds, it's about a third, about a third, about a third, and about a third. So somewhere right in there. I want his eye line about right there, but I want him to scoot back just a little bit. So I'm going to have him about right there to start out with. Now it looks like he's a little bit turned. I'm going to actually take my camera and I'm going to rotate it back this way, and then I'm going to pan back over. That's about where I want him, right there. Okay. So once I do that, I'm going to actually grab the camera and turn it off so I can't move the camera. That way I can still do it just like this in my viewport, but if I go to like my top view, I can't select the camera in any of my views. So that makes it nice so I don't accidentally click him if I'm trying to select a bone or something like that. I can not have to worry about it. Okay, so once again, 1 on the numpad is camera view, 2 is front, 3 is lights, so it'll cycle between your lights. 4 is characters right, 5 is top, 6 is characters left, 7 is an orthographic view, so if I'm in 1 and I hit T to tumble out of it, like this, that sets my perspective view. So if I go back to 1 and then I hit 7, it'll go back to that. Now it doesn't do the greatest job in the world, but anyways, 8 is back, and 9 doesn't do anything right now. So I'm just going to go back to my camera view. Now, actually, let's go to front view. One of the most important things I can do is, with my character before I start any animation, is I want to key everything that I'm going to key before I start doing animation. The reason for that is you don't want floating keyframes. One mistake that a lot of animators will make is they will key something at, say, frame 0. Then they will go and key something at frame 10. They'll go and put an in-between at frame 5, but they'll only key certain things, and there's different keys for different things on 0, 5, and 10. So what you get is this really nasty blending between those keyframes where, say your hand was only keyed at 0 and 10, but you have a different pose at frame 5, your hand is going to float in between those and not hit where it needs to hit on frame 5. So I'm going to go through and just select everything. I'm going to click on Will, click on Action Mode, and before I do anything else, I'm going to go over to Shortcut to Will, and I'm just going to say New Choreography Action. Okay, and that choreography action I'm going to rename skeletal animation. That way I know that this is just the bones that I'm working with, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to translate and rotate every bone. And I'm going to just do it on frame 0. So I'm just going to go, just use the arrow keys up, down. I'm going to rotate this one, rotate this one, rotate, oops. Just go through all the bones, rotate them, translate them. Now these bones right here don't translate, neither do these, so I'm not going to worry about it. This one just rotates, rotate it out. Doesn't matter, I'm just setting a keyframe for everything right now, so I'm just going to rotate that. I'm going to rotate this, and these. Okay, and then rotation here, rotation here, rotation here, rotation here. And the hands, I'm going to translate them and rotate them. Okay. Alright. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the finger properties so I can see the fingers and do the same thing. So I will pause it while I do that. But before, let me actually show you. When you're working with visibility properties like I showed you in rigging, you can do it two ways. You can go into the shortcut, and if you in the shortcut you go into user properties, show, finger bones. If I turn them on, you'll notice that the on button or the on turned blue, and it worked. You can see them all. But one thing you'll notice is in that skeletal animation, I now have user properties keyed, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is just click it and delete it. Okay, and I'm just going to hit the spacebar to refresh. What I want to do is instead of doing it in the shortcut, I'm going to do it in the model. So I go into user properties, show, finger bones on. So it shows them, but it doesn't actually set a keyframe for them, and that just keeps your keyframing very clean and neat. I'm actually going to pause it for just a second here and delete the keyframe that's set right here, and I'll show you here in a second. What I'm going to do is, you can do it that way and just set a keyframe and animate from there, or another thing that you can do is go out to a frame and then do all your keyframing, and then go back to frame 0 and force a keyframe, and it will keyframe everything, but it will put it back to its bind pose. So I'm going to do that here. I'm just going to go through and key every bone. Just real quick. So it translates and rotates. Rotate, 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 rotate. So I'm just going to do this, and then what I'll do is I will do the fingers, and I'll pause it while I do that so you don't have to sit here. Okay, now what I did is I just keyed everything, all the bones that I'm going to use for animation. I made sure that I keyed them in any respective way that they would move. So anything that moves like rotation and translation, I just made sure I did that. The hands, same thing, translation and rotation. The one thing is this finger bone in the fingers, you don't need to worry about it because you're not really going to be, that bone is not really getting keys. All it's doing is it's being a tool so that I can key all the fingers with your children at the same time, which is a really easy and nice way to do that. So one thing that sometimes what I'll do is I will actually grab this and I will create an action. So I'm going to just double click on actions, and I'm going to use will, and I'll go into that action, and so at frame 0 I'm just going to make a relaxed hand pose. So I'm just going to bring his hands in like this. Okay. So just kind of a nice like his hand's a bit relaxed, maybe a little less than that. Just pull the fingers up a little bit here. Okay, so now that I've got that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make sure that my copy body, my body is on here, key model, and I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to hit chain and pan over to the other hand here, click on the fingers, and hit edit paste mirrored. And it just created that exact same hand on either side. Now what I can use this for, I'm just going to save this as hands.act. Okay. What I can use this for is I can use this in my animation when I want to put a hand in a certain position. Just put it, if I'm going to do extremes, that's fine. But if I want to put it in a relaxed position, I can just come into the action, copy the keyframe, just copy it, go back to my choreography, click the bone, and click chain, and then hit paste. And see, it goes right into it. So I don't have to worry about posing the hand over and over again. It just makes it really nice. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll create a whole action where it's just on every keyframe there's a different hand pose that you want to use, and then you don't have to sit there and tweak the hand and get the fingers exactly how you want them. You can just get them in that position right off the bat. But so you can do that if you want. You don't have to. I'm going to do this. Hit paste. Did the same thing. So if I open up my timeline here now, I'm actually going to do this. If you look at the choreography, first of all, I'm going to save it as, and I'm going to save it as, just naming it as Don't Touch My Stuff 01. Hit enter. Okay. And then we're all good to go. Now if you look right here, I'm going to turn my volume down. If you look right here, on this animation, I've keyed all this stuff in here. Control heel left looks like it doesn't have a keyframe on it. So I'm actually going to grab it and just key it. Okay. But if you look here, if I click on bones, you'll notice that all these bones have keyframes on them. And if I scroll back to 0, they all still have keyframes on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to frame 0, make sure I have key model, and just force a keyframe. And what it does is it just gets rid of, it brings in all the bones and keys all the bones. But any bone, and then what I can do is I can scroll out to frame 10, delete it, and now I have a keyframe set for every single bone that I'm going to be using to animate with. Makes it really nice and easy when you're trying to copy and paste keyframes. You don't get floating stuff. You can just force a keyframe and you know that everything's keyed the way you need it to be. So makes it really nice once you do that. Now I'm going to turn off finger bones because I'm going to do the main animation first. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go through and pick out keyframes from my animation and start putting them in. Now I want to start him out kind of in a relaxed position. Hit 1 to go in the keyframe. Okay, so I'm going to have him up just a little bit, bring his hands out here. If I look at my reference, kind of in this position is what I want, but instead of looking this way, I want him looking that way. So I'm just going to start putting in keyframes here and just getting him set how I want. And one thing is, some people will tell you animate to the camera. Whatever's not in the camera doesn't matter, which is very true, and is a great way to do it. The problem with that is sometimes you'll start to, it looks lined up in the camera. It looks like my hand looks like it's okay right here, but for all I know it could be way back here. See, there's very little difference in the look, but when I actually come back and look at it, it can look right in the camera, but at the same time, when I'm trying to do arcs and get things right like that, it's not going to look right. So I tend to try and make sure everything is correct in the camera. I'm actually going to go back to this action. I'm going to hit copy, and go back over here, and I'm going to hit paste. Just relaxed all the fingers. So he looks a bit tense. I'm going to drop his shoulders just a little bit. Drop this shoulder. Now one thing that I can do is I can paste mirrored. So I'm actually going to grab his hand, turn it a little bit here, make sure his elbow is pointing back. Not too much in, but about there. Okay, so he's a little relaxed. Now, one thing I can do is I can grab this bone. When you're doing paste mirrored, what you need to do is just copy with key model on. So you hit copy, then go back to single bone, and click the bone you want to paste, and then go up edit paste mirrored, and it'll pop that down. So I'm actually going to, once I did that, then I can just start clicking the bones and hit edit paste mirrored. Okay, and then this one, edit paste mirrored. Okay, so now he's kind of mirrored over, just as kind of a static whatever. Now I want to give him a little bit of weight, so I'm just going to, change his hips a little bit, maybe make him stand to the side. Relax him just a little bit. Okay. So then once I'm done with that, I'm just going to hit key model, force keyframe. Make sure everything is keyed. Now it usually takes just a minute. But just make sure everything is keyed. Now whatever you click on in the project workspace is what will show up in your timeline. So I'm just going to click on bones down there, so then I can just see where my bone keyframes are. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to stop the video, and I'm going to go through all the keyframes, and I'm going to do it in time lapse so that you don't have to sit there and watch me grab each bone and move it, but you'll be able to see what I'm doing. First of all, one thing that I want to go over is where those keyframes are. So I'm ready about right here. Okay, so I want up, down, this one, don't. Up right here, that's another keyframe. That's a keyframe. That's a keyframe. That's a keyframe. That's a keyframe right there. And that's a keyframe there. This is a keyframe. That's a keyframe. That's a keyframe. That is right there. That is right there. That is. That is. That is. That is right there. That is there. And I can just go through, that is right there. And this is kind of a moving hold right here. And then that right there. That right there. And that right there. And it's kind of a moving hold, and then he turns. So that would be a keyframe. That would be a keyframe, and then kind of a walk away. So as you can see, you just walk through the video, and as you go through the video, you can pick out those keyframes that you want to use. Now, if I'm not looking at reference like this, or if I'm just animating to something that's doesn't have any audio, I'm going to put my keyframes in on frame 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. One frame apart, I'm just going to key. And I'm not going to worry about any timing when I put those in at first. And then I'm going to worry about timing after that. So once I get all my keys in, I start stretching them out and moving them around so that I can figure out the timing on the animation. On this, however, I've got an audio clip and I'm trying to match stuff to the audio clip. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find that section, that part in the audio clip, and set that keyframe at that point in the audio clip so that it will match up the way I need it to. So I'm going to go through that in a time-lapse video so that you can watch it, but it doesn't take so long. And then when I'm done, we will go ahead and look at that. So this next part will be in time-lapse.